Welcome to Transformative Talks and the Soul-Led Entrepreneur Series. In partnership with the Chief Quality of Life and the Promenade Platform, we are geared towards bringing you uplifting stories of soul-led entrepreneurs and how their dedication to purpose has fueled their business. The Promenade is a virtual platform to learn and grow with others by accessing wellness, healing, and empowerment communities led by skilled experts. Whether you're a parent, caregiver, holistic practitioner, or soul-led entrepreneur, there's a supportive community for you at the Promenade. Hello, and welcome back to Transformative Talks. I'm your host, Chelsea Gilbert, and for today's episode, we are doing another installment of the Soul-Led Entrepreneur. So today, our guest is Cynthia Kofel, who is a podcast host, teen anxiety coach, school counselor, owner of Cynthia Kofel Coaching, and she's also the community success manager at the Promenade. So welcome, Cynthia. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
So I really love what you do, I think in particular because I have kids of my own too, which are teenagers. And one of the things that Cynthia does is she works one-on-one coaching with teens for anxiety specifically. And I know both of my teens struggle with that. So what are some of the most common themes that you see in the teens that come to you?
A lot of the ones that I have worked with, their parents have sent them to me. Most of the time, it wasn't their idea at first to come. Their parents like, something's going on here and I don't know. But when they actually get to me, a lot of them are just anxious about their future. Like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I like. I don't know what school to go to. I don't know if I should go to this job. And also like relationship wise, there's some anxiety, like, some of them are like, I'm not really interested in relationships, but then I feel like I'm supposed to be because other people are. Or sometimes they're very anxious about, I really want a relationship and maybe no one's going to like me. And you know what's so fun about this is that the typical themes are the same themes that I think have always been the actual problems of these are the things that make me anxious, or I feel really uncomfortable about these things. I think they're universal things. There's a lot of interesting parenting dynamics that I see as a theme. But again, it's still the same things I struggled with my parents. They don't understand me. They don't listen to me. I have these ideas. They don't like them. Or I have all these rules and my friends don't have them. All of that is the same. And there was no social media when I was growing up. And I feel like I really connect so often with them, like, oh, yes, I totally get it. I felt like that too, even though I didn't grow up at all like they're growing up. And I do understand the dynamics of the way the world is now does make them more anxious. When I was in school, I might be anxious about friends, or do people like me, or does this person like me, or will they date me? But I didn't really know what was going on in people's lives other than what I saw at school or something they told me about. Now they can see I didn't get invited to that party. That person is on social media with this other person. Or I experienced bullying when I was in high school, and it was either to my face, in the hallway or in the bathroom or whatever at school, or kids telling other kids bad things and then them telling me in person. Or I remember one time I got a card in the mail and it didn't have the sending address. It just was addressed to me. And when I opened it up, the card on the front was nice, but on the inside, and it said, and you're a B word. And then, of course, it's not signed by anyone. So I experienced the same things, but it was way easier to ignore it. But it was just different than like constant barrage of things. But I would say the typical themes are what we've always experienced as young people, just so much uncertainty about who am I? Do people like me? Do I fit in? Am I going to be successful? What should I do with my life? Everything's unfair. My parents are unfair. The teachers are unfair. School's boring. It's just really the very same themes that we've always experienced. But I feel like now I can educate young people about how so much of it is normal. And I love being able to tell young people that this happens to everyone. Everyone is feeling this way. We just need to figure out what are your specific things that are getting in the way and how can we do those differently? How can we plan in advance if you want to do this thing and anxiety is stopping you from doing that? How do we work through that uncomfortableness to get to the thing that you want to do?
There were so many good points that you made that I was just like taking notes on this and this and this that I'd like to kind of to comment on or touch back around on.
Hmm.
So, especially towards the end, what you were talking about, how this is normal for teens to feel this way, and kind of
Hmm.
like creating that self acceptance around, hey, this is just something I'm experiencing in the moment. I watched this really good TED talk, and if I can remember, I'll have to Google it to try to find it because it was really good. And it really helped me as a parent to kind of understand and have a little bit more sympathy for my teens, in the rough moments where they're having outbursts or where they're having meltdowns or where they're having overwhelm or when things are just really intense for them. But it was talking about how biologically, when we go through that like pubescent period, until probably like the age of 25, when our brains are fully developed, our brains are operating from a different perspective. There's the biology is different. Like there's so much stuff happening that, yeah, teens are going to have bigger emotions. Their social lives, things that are happening are going to seem like their whole world versus them being able to like step back and view things from the bigger perspective.
Hmm.
And it was such a powerful TED talk. I don't know if you know what TED talk I'm talking about or if you've like read any research on that.
I don't, but I recently, because I have toddler grandchildren, I have a 4.5-year-old, 3.5-year-old, and a almost 2-year-old grandchildren that live near me. So I see them all the time. So I'm seeing every little piece of their growing with the big emotions as a toddler. And I read recently that a teenager is just going through the same stage as an older child. So, they go through the big emotions, they're trying to figure out what in the world do I do with these? They're having temper tantrums, whatever. Then things kind of level out for a while because they've kind of figured that out and they aren't really experiencing anything new in their bodies or in their minds for probably that elementary time for the most part. So it's almost like they have to go through toddlerhood again. And I don't know how much research is in that, and I don't know what the research is. I just remember thinking, oh, that totally makes sense because now they're having to navigate the big emotions, but with this new brain because they're much smarter and they are now experiencing more independent things. Their parents aren't planning every single thing that they do or telling them every single thing to do anymore. Now they have to do some of that. When I think about the job that I do, it isn't because I don't do therapy. So I'm not helping people with anxiety from a therapeutic lens. I was a school counselor. So I'm seeing everything from just like developmentally how these things happen. And so I feel like my biggest job, and I think the part that makes the kids feel the best and their parents, is I'm educating them on how these things actually work. Just like you said, you saw this TED talk and they're like, now I have more empathy for this situation, or now I'm understanding it better. I feel like I'm that person for each like family, like saying, oh, this is normal. And these things that are happening because of this. And then they're like, okay, I get it now. And I call it psychoeducation. I think most of the time in the counseling world, they do call it psychoeducation, but it's educating about how does your brain work? Why is a teenage brain different than a younger person's brain or an older person's brain? And we do a lot of stuff about thoughts and feelings. Like we all have these thoughts. Everyone has anxious thoughts. A lot of people I think originally come to me not sure if they have anxiety or not. And sometimes they've been diagnosed with anxiety and they come as kind of like aftercare after they've been somewhere to get some help for the therapeutic part of that. And then they're like, okay, now I just want a goal set or I just want to like work from where I am right now. But I think a lot of the clients that I've had, it's just been like the parents aren't sure what's going on. They think it might be anxiety, it might be something else. And so then in talking about kind of normalizing it, a lot of times people are like, oh, well, I don't think I really have a disorder. I just have anxious thoughts. And I thought that anxious thoughts meant I shouldn't do this thing, or the anxious thoughts make me feel so uncomfortable. I definitely have clients that avoid school because school is chaotic, or, they want to control a lot of things, or they're uncertain about what's happening there. thing about going to school. I think parents, a lot of times, it's easy to be like, okay, well, just stay home today. Just don't worry about it. Like, we'll talk about it later or whatever. But the more then that they don't have to experience that uncomfortableness, then it gets scarier and scarier. And their brain starts thinking, oh, this really is life or death because they're avoiding it and they're continuing to be this upset about it.
Yeah.
I
Have
think
to do hard things.
yes, yes, and, I always tell them, "You have to get really good at feeling bad," and I nobody wants to hear that, and I even had a client on our consult call, I thought she was not gonna hire me because I told the girl, I was like, "We're not gonna get rid of anxiety. Anxiety is actually here to serve us in a good way about some things, like, if we didn't have anxiety, we would just be doing all sorts of things we shouldn't be doing that are dangerous to us, that are hurtful to us in many ways. And so we're not going to get rid of it. It's a natural response to things that our body and brain thinks are going to hurt us. I said sometimes people's alarm systems get messed up, just like they do in a building. The alarm system might go off accidentally because something's glitching or something isn't working right. And I said that's what happens to people sometimes is that your alarm system is going off for the wrong reasons.
Mhm.
And we need to figure out how to turn the volume down on that alarm so that you can still go do the things that you want to do, like go to school. Well, sometimes kids say they don't want to go to school. And I think if we asked any teenager if they wanted to go to school, they would say they don't.
Yeah. The
But
majority
most
of them
people,
definitely do. I know all 3 of my kids struggle. Like, my oldest is in college now, but my middle is a senior in high school, and my youngest is 11. So they both are like, "No, I really don't
yep.
wanna go," and when it comes time for breaks, they're like, "Oh my gosh, finally."
Yes. Yeah. So no kids really like school. And
Mhm.
I mean, unfortunately, I wish that we did school differently so kids actually liked it. But that's a whole nother
That's a whole other
A whole
rabbit
'nother
hole.
thing. Yeah, I could tell I could have a whole podcast about that, but just talking about how life is about doing things that are uncomfortable. I mean, there's a lot of things in this world that we're gonna have to do that are uncomfortable, and so for those kids that would say, "I hate school and I don't wanna go there," I'm like, "I get it, and I understand, the reasons why it's boring or you don't wanna do it, but if nothing else, I mean, for one, it is the box you have to check off to do the next things, if you wanna do the next things, but I'm learning how to do things I don't wanna do because that's what I have to do when I'm an adult. That actually school does teach that very well because you have to study and you have to go there and there's people that are annoying and I mean it's just all the things that can be anxiety producing, but you're going to have those in your life, at your job, in relationships, your neighbor. I mean, who knows? There's all sorts of reasons why you would have the same feelings in your adult life. And I remember as a teen thinking, the way I feel right now is not how I'm going to feel when I'm an adult. This is all just magically going to go away because I reach a certain age or I get out of school. And, those things don't actually go away. We have to learn to manage how we're feeling and regulate those things. And the younger we do that, and especially if we're learning it while our parents are still in our home helping us do those things, it's just so much better than if
Mhm.
we get released into adulthood and it's like, see you later, have fun regulating yourself when you never did before.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not gonna work out very well, and we see adults now who don't regulate themselves well, and it's just unfortunate because it's something that can be learned. It's a skill that can be learned.
In relation to that, I wanted to circle back around from the first one of the first things you mentioned. You were talking about your generation when you were younger and in school. There just wasn't any real acknowledgement about anxiety or I think
Mhm.
too just mental health.
Right?
Young people, it was kind of like swept under the rug. It's kind of like, well, you just bite the bullet, you push through it and you shove it down, you don't deal with it and you move on to the next thing because you have to do this and you have to do
Mhm.
that. So I think now for sure, like just the acknowledgement of, hey, mental health in general, like making sure you're supporting that as you're growing into an adult and supporting it into adulthood is an important thing. And I've noticed that I think when I went to school, it was a similar thing where it just wasn't really talked about. We weren't having conversations with our parents about, how we were feeling during the day and that we felt overwhelmed and things like that. So my oldest son, who is 19, I think his generation is sort of where that started to become a thing. Him and a lot of his friends are all very self-aware and aware of the terminology of anxiety and just different mental health things where they're like, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need to take a moment. Whereas I think 25, 30 and up kind of, it wasn't a thing then. So when you were talking about that as well, you mentioned, you experienced bullying and things like that in your youth. And I was wondering if that has been kind of like a motivator or something that helped you to kind of lean into this profession of like counseling students and supporting students and giving them support as they're dealing with these things.
Definitely. I was a difficult teen, and my parents, thank goodness they love me so much because I was really bad, and I don't think they probably did like me when I was a teenager, but I was just very angry and I acted out a lot. And, again, like nobody was talking about mental health. I just thought, well, I guess there's something wrong with me. And also, I just felt so angry about that. I think because I wasn't able to talk about things, but I didn't know that that's why I was angry because I was a teenager and I didn't know why do I feel like this? Just I want to break every rule and I want to run away and I want to do all these things. And so when I went into education, because I originally was a special education teacher, and I just wanted to help these kids feel better and feel different and not be going through those things. And I was a special ed teacher for 6 years. And the entire time, all I did was talk to those kids about social stuff, friends and how to regulate themselves. And, here's how you work well with this teacher. Instead of doing this, you probably should do this. And parenting, like they were mad at their parents. Or I just spent all this time talking to them about that. It was hard for me to get to the actual lessons of school because we spent so much time on this other stuff, but I knew how important it was. And I was working on my school counseling degree during that time. But when I became a school counselor, it was just like, oh, I can finally take care of these kids and help them see how important their mental health is and how important and how much they have control over what's going on. Because I remember, I think a lot of my anger came from, I felt totally out of control. And I felt like all these adults are telling me what to do, and I never get to do what I want to do. And I kept talking to them about actually have a lot of control. You just don't know it. And here's the ways that you can have control. And here's the things that you can do to have control. And I could just see the relief in them. And I was like, this just has to be my thing that I do forever. And so I retired from the school system 3 years ago, but I had already started working on this business while I was doing that because I thought as soon as I'm done with the school system, I'm going to spend 40 hours a week just helping kids and their families figure this stuff out because it's just that important. And the schools are better at social emotional stuff than they were when we were in school, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and it needs to be daily. It needs social emotional or mental health literacy should be something that is being taught every day, like math, science, reading. I mean, I saw this statistic the other day and it's funny, but it's so true. It was like 1 out of 5 people will be diagnosed with some sort of mental health disorder, but 5 out of 5 humans have mental health to regulate or manage. And I was like, this is so true. It's not like, oh, these people over here need help with their mental health. Everybody needs help with their mental health, and not like intensive therapy help, but everybody needs to pay attention to it. Everybody needs to understand it. And we're still not there yet. Like, the world doesn't understand that mental health is everything. If you don't have good mental health, it doesn't matter that you have a 4.0 GPA. It doesn't matter that you got a scholarship to Yale. If you can't manage yourself, that isn't going to do you any good.
Since you've been in this field, like working with kids and teens for such a long time, are there any super memorable moments where you had an experience with a teen or a child, after helping them and they kind of came back and reported to you some of the changes that they were having with your help that just kind of made you go, oh my gosh, I am totally doing the right thing, or oh, this is super rewarding, or this is just something that is letting me know that I'm on the right track with the type of work that I'm in?
There are so many. I would never even be able to say them all. I tell people, especially when people are just talking about jobs in general, but I say I have saved multiple kids' lives, and I know that to be true. And I know it's true, not because I always find out what happens in the end, because in a school system, you have those kids from, sometimes it was a longer period of time, but for most of the time, it would be like 4 years tops. You would have them. Whether I worked in a middle school one time and it was fifth grade through eighth grade.
Mhm.
So, I would have influence over them through those grades, but then they went on to high school and sometimes I didn't know what happened after that. My last 14 years, I was at a high school, so it was 9 through 12. So I had the most of the formative stuff there. But then unless they tell me afterwards what happens, I don't know. But I would say probably 7 years ago, I got a Facebook message from a student that I remembered him, but not really. I mean, his name, I was like, oh, yeah, I kind of remember him. But he was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I was suicidal the times that I came to you. And he had never told me that he was. He
Mhm.
just would be like, hey, I want to talk to you. And we just talk over life or whatever. But he said, I wanted you to know that you saved my life because you talking to me and getting me more connected. I think he lived with his grandparents. And I think I maybe had helped him figure out something with his grandparent relationship that was, like maybe he was sort of estranged a little bit from them, even though he lived with them. But we
Mhm.
like sat down and talked together or something. But he was like, that changed everything. And I know it saved my life. And so then I'm like, once in a while, I'll get something that I'm like, oh my gosh. And that's a story that I would have never known if he wouldn't have come back years later to tell me. But
Mhm.
I had one girl, she was a sophomore and her friends brought her to my office and she had been cutting and burning herself. And she did not want to talk to me, but they were scared and they were like, you have to talk to some adult. And so they drug her into my office and she didn't talk the whole time. I mean, she was mostly like looking down, but her friends would be like, tell her about you carved loser on your leg and tell her that you used an iron and burned your chest and like all this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh. And, she was already mad about being there. And then I'm going to have to say, oh, and by the way, I'm going to call your parents
Mhm.
because, I'm a mandatory, I have to let your parents know that you're doing
Mhm.
something so dangerous as that. And she was so mad at me. I mean, like, I think she slammed the door when they left because I said, I'm going to be calling your parents and they need to know the stuff. She slipped a note under my door after like the next day. And it was so mean. It was like, you're the worst person in the world. I
Mhm.
hate you. You have ruined my life. I will never speak to you again. And I was the only social emotional counselor in the high school. And so I was sad because I was like, if she's not going to talk to me, she has no one to talk to. And I did never talk to her again during high school. And she would even, if I was going down the hall where she was at, she would go a different way. She would go in a different room. And I cried that whole day because I was like, that is not who I am. That's not what I wanted her to get from that. But the last day of the senior year, the seniors were like cleaning out their lockers, getting ready to leave the school. And she came into my office and she said, I wanted to thank you for calling my parents. Said, when my parents, they took me to the doctor, like the physical, her primary care person. And she said, my thyroid was out of regulation. And that was actually what was causing my depression. And she said, I got on medication and all those feelings went away. And she said, I feel really bad that this whole time I've just been ignoring you. But I just, I was so embarrassed and ashamed of how I had acted when this originally happened. She said, but I just could not leave school without telling you that it changed my life. And she became a math teacher. And I think
Oh, wow.
about, and I have no connection with her now. I knew she became a math teacher only because like the town over posted who their new teachers were one year and I happened to see her name and I was like, oh my gosh, she became a teacher. So I don't have any connection with her now, but I mean, those are the things. And those are just two of, I could just go on
2
forever.
examples out of the hundreds or thousands of kids you've connected with over the years.
This work is so important. And I just know that if I would have had an adult like me, now I've said this before and this makes me sad too. The adults that I did reach out to when I was a teenager, they weren't all bad. Some of them were nice, but one of them ended up grooming me into a whole nother thing. And so, I didn't have a ton of adults that would actually tell me real stuff that would really help me. So when I think about this is so important to me because if I would have had somebody like me, I
Mhm.
think it's not that I've turned out bad. I love how I've turned out. and I probably needed some of those things to be this person,
Mhm.
but I could have made a lot less mistakes and I could have helped myself not have so many problems if I would have had somebody that could have just talked me through this very simple stuff about what you're thinking in your mind. You don't have to believe any of that stuff and you don't have to think that there's something wrong with you. Like just somebody to talk it out, like take all my thoughts out, look at them, investigate, be curious, try to figure it out. It could have been so different.
Thank you for sharing those. Those were
Yeah.
beautiful, and it made me tear up.
It makes me feel like that too. I'm like, "Oh."
Yeah. So I think it really speaks to how influential we are as adults to
Mm,
the youth, and how important it is that we as adults are aware of that. And we're going to talk about this later, but one of the programs that Cynthia has is called Parenting Through the Maze. And I was looking through your website about what that was. And you're not just teaching the kids to self regulate, you're teaching the parents to self regulate. And one of the things that I've learned through doing trauma informed work is that if you are not regulated, especially as a parent with children, like you can't help them regulate themselves. You can't help them work through what they have to work through because you're so hyper focused on your own survival in your brain. So I think that in itself too is very important work, not just with the youth, but also teaching the parents how to help themselves so they can help their
mm.
children.
Yeah. What I found when working with minors, if we leave the parents out of the equation, that doesn't really make any sense because I can teach all these skills and help the kids to understand it. But then
Mhm.
if their parents don't understand it or don't know what they're doing with me, which part of my parent membership is the parents have access to everything that they learn from me so that they also know how to talk about it or how to work with their child at home, and that is a very important piece of the equation that when I was in school, I didn't have in the school system. I could talk to parents a little bit about different things that were going on, but for the most part, I didn't have time to educate them on what I was doing. I was just
Mhm.
educating the child. And
Mhm.
now that I get to choose how I want to do this education, I want the parents to be educated too.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I love that
Mhm.
you're doing that. So we're going to switch gears again in this series, the Solid Entrepreneur series. It's um, in affiliation with the Promenade Platform. If you have watched previous episodes, you'll see I interviewed Terry, Dr. Terry Kukovich. She is the founder, and we're going to talk to Cynthia a little bit about how she came into participating and helping out with the Promenade. So, how did you even meet Terry to begin with?
I think it was 4 years ago. I was just starting my business and I had I still have a podcast, but kind of like the middle of my podcast, I had a lot of guests on my podcast, other people that were doing stuff with parents or kids that I could interview and we could talk about other topics other than anxiety. And I had Miriam Campbell on my podcast and she lives in Israel and she does social skills for kids and we were talking about, how that fits in with what I do. And when you have a podcast interview, a lot of times you talk before or after just about life or business or whatever. And she said, I have this friend that you ought to know. And it was Terry. And I said, okay. And she said, she's got this thing that she's trying to put together. And I think she needs to know you. And I was like, okay.
Intuitively, you guys need to know each other.
And so Terry and I got on the phone and I was telling her about my business and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I think you're the perfect fit to be on this platform that I'm working on and learning about." And I think shortly around that time, because Miriam was also friends with Lisa Richer and Amanda Gable, I think I met them all about the same time. But Terry was like, I have this vision. And I was like, it sounds amazing. I definitely, tell me what I need to do. And because it was still, in the thought more formation process or whatever, she would invite me to meetings where we would talk about, well, what should it look like? And what about this? And what about that? And we were all just kind of in these meetings. And it was, I didn't join to be on the team. I was just like, hey, I want to be one of the business people that is in there. And it's just like, it's just evolved into this position, but I love it because it fits perfectly with who I am as a person because I am a connector. That's one of my Clifton strengths is connectedness. And being a community success manager means connecting the other business owners into the platform, as well as connecting the members, and not just connecting them as separate entities, but also connecting everyone together. And so part of what I do is the onboarding, trying to help not the actual like getting people as far as businesses into it, but once they are a member, then helping them. How do you set up your profile? How do you get your business on the platform? What are different things? Like I like tech stuff, and so a lot of times I'm helping people with tech things that they're trying to figure out. And then I also work in the the Soul-Led Entrepreneur Collective, where we have strategy meetings and spotlight meetings where we're taking people, the business owners, and we're all learning from each other about how to make our businesses better. What I love about a group when you're talking about business strategy is that everyone's had different coaches, or they've tried different things, or they've been in different programs, or read different books, or listened to different podcasts. And so then when you're working with a group of entrepreneurs that have all of this different information, you have access then to the collective of all of their experience, education, everything they've read, everything they've listened to. I mean, it's just, you get all of that just by talking with them. And so I'm running those meetings and I'm facilitating them. And I love that. I love just I just love dealing with people. And so that part is just really fun for me. And I'm glad that position in the team is perfect for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Just in being in the meetings and then, seeing the emails you send out and talking to you in the leadership meetings as well, it's definitely the perfect fit for you as far as what your skills are and what you can bring to the promenade as a whole. And also, one of the things I really love about the promenade as well is the community aspect.
Mhm.
And it's just being able to connect people and create that community and be a part of that is really awesome. So, one of the features of the promenade is that there are things called boutiques. So, could you explain a little bit about what those are and how they function within the platform?
Yes. The boutiques are like your own private store, kind of in a way. Like when you have your business in the marketplace, you have like a little window, and it's just kind of like a little snapshot of who you are and what you offer. But when you have a boutique, it's like having your own store. And so like in my boutique, I have free resources, things that I've created, for opt-ins or different things over the years that I think families would enjoy. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel. So I put a lot of that information in there just to kind of highlight my different episodes and put the links so that people can click in to watch the YouTube video or listen to that podcast, or a little bit about, what I'm talking about in that particular episode. And then my parent membership is in there, but it's behind, like you can see the information about it, but then you would pay a monthly fee to be part of the membership to get that extra stuff, like what, as a parent, that if you had a child working with me, the stuff that they would be doing in the one-to-one program, all of that, all the videos and the self-learning is there to actually learn all of the lessons that I'm teaching my one-to-one clients. It also has replays of all the workshops I've ever done. It's every resource I've ever created for anything I've ever done. So if I created a resource for a particular family for their specific problem, I still put it in there because somebody else can probably use it too. Like one of the recent ones I just created was how to deal with your child using mean language to you as a parent or to other siblings in the family. And it's like kind of like a script where if they say this, you could say this. And I made it for a family that was having this particular problem, but what parent couldn't use a script on how to talk about mean language? Yep. And so all that kind of stuff is in there. And I feel like because it is just such an extensive library of, 5 years of building this business, that it's worth a monthly fee to have access to all that stuff. And you have access to it as long as you're in the membership. And then I do coaching calls, or you can also have like an add-on where you could get some personal one-to-one support or help with a particular issue if you had it. So, and I also give the UMAP assessment, which is it's actually 4 assessments in one. You learn your top 5 Clifton strengths. You find out what your values are, your preferred skills versus your burnout skills, and then also your personality or your interests. And I give this to all my clients, but you can just take it online through the UMAP assessment site for, I think it's like $129 or $139. But if you are in the membership, it's automatically, I think it's like $64 or $69. So when you're in the membership, you get it for a lot less. And then you get all the information that goes along with that. And actually, the UMAP is made for adults as well. So a lot of times, parents just like to know what those things are for themselves now, and it can kind of inform their parenting. If you're thinking about strengths-based parenting, or just knowing what your kids' strengths are versus what your strengths are, can be eye-opening in how they're dealing with you or how you're dealing with them. And I had this one client who they were fighting all the time because the child valued generosity. And so they wanted, every time they saw a homeless person, they wanted to give them money, or they wanted to, give them something because they're generous. But their parents were always like, we're not doing that, and they're going to waste it. And there was really a lot of fights about it. I talked with the parents about generosity is a value, like one of his top 5 values. He wants to be generous, and that's a beautiful thing. So how can we help him be generous, but also not be scammed or taken advantage of? And I had a friend of mine, she had these little bags, and they were just like little paper bags that she kept in her car. And whenever she saw a homeless person, she'd just hand him a bag that had like these little essential things in them. And I was telling him about it, and I was like, well, that's a way for him to be generous. So it was a way to fix that gap between the fighting about this value that he has of being generous, which isn't a bad thing, but they just had to figure out, how do we allow him to be generous in a way that's safe and fits for our family or whatever. So it's just like doing those kinds of things. And so people get the UMAP assessment too, and they can take it as well to find out, more things about themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really big into self-reflection and figuring things out about yourself, because that helps as a whole. In general, I've done the Enneagram, I've done the Myers-Briggs, I use astrology, and it has really helped me to navigate and figure out my kids, because like I would do it for my kids as well. So I totally get, and I'm absolutely on board with what you're saying with that. It's really good to understand the personality, because each kid is different as well. If you have multiple kids, you're probably going to have to deal with them multiple ways, because you can't like do it all across the board, because they are all just so inherently different. Some of the things you were talking about that the UMAP brings up and points out for you, I thought that was really interesting. So I might like look into doing something like that too. So let's talk a little bit about the membership programs that you offer on your website.
Okay. Well, my podcast is the Teen Anxiety Maze, because I do think that anxiety does feel like a maze a lot of times. Like you're not sure how to get out of feeling like that, or how to stop spinning around in your own thoughts. And so that's where the name for my podcast came in. And then my program that I do one-to-one with young people, and I don't really have an age on it. I really like high school or college age kids. I always say like 14 to 24 is like my favorite age range there. But that program is called the Anxiety Maze Navigators. So I'm teaching them one-to-one about themselves, about anxiety, about how their brain works. They give me situations that they really would like to fix. Like, I really like to learn to drive a car, but I'm too afraid. Or I really want to have more friends, but I don't know how to do that. Or I wish I could go to social events and not just feel like this oddball person. So whatever it is that they want to work on, so it's very specific to them. But then we work through 12 weeks or 12 sessions, but it's usually about 12 weeks through these different lessons of learning all these different techniques and learning about themselves by taking the UMAP and all those things. And then we just come up with a plan. Like, if you want to do these things, here's ways that you can get to that goal. I have one client that it's her 4th year with me, and she doesn't really need me anymore. But she said, I just like having an adult to talk to every week just about the stuff that's going on at school. And every week it is different. Like, sometimes she's getting overwhelmed with schoolwork. And sometimes, she was dating a boy and now he won't talk to her, or her friends are making really scary choices. She doesn't know what to do to help them. There's just always something that we can talk about and use all the skills that she's already learned. And so people stay with me as long as they want to, but 12 weeks is typically, most of the time, people are like, okay, I have the skills that I can move forward and try to do these things on my own. And then the parents can stay in the membership as long as they want to, because when 12 weeks is up, that doesn't mean that's the end of parenting situations that come up where you're like, now, wait a minute, what was I supposed to do? Or like several months down the road, it might be like, oh, well, now they want to do this, or now this happened. And so the parents can still have ongoing support as long as they want to be in the membership. So parenting membership is parenting through the maze. And so everything's about the maze, but I do think that it does seem like a maze. It totally made sense when those names came to me, because I was like, oh yeah, and the parents need to understand how to navigate it. The kids need to understand how to navigate it. And so that's how those programs came about. But the membership is the parenting part. The program, the Anxiety Maze Navigator, is just paying a one-time for the 12 weeks. Now, if you wanted to keep going 12 more weeks, you would just keep buying that package over and over again, if that makes sense. So it's standalone, but you can just continue to have your child just keep working with me for whatever. We don't keep going through the same things. We then just take what we learned in those 12 weeks and then use it for whatever comes up every week in their life. And sometimes parents are like, well, we maybe wouldn't want to do every week, but we'll do every other week. Or maybe we just want to go to once a month now, where you just need that like check in every month. How's it going? Here's the things that are going on. What can I do about it? And because I was a school counselor, I do a lot of like college and career planning, because that is a big thing that's anxiety producing for young people. And I've even had college students that I'm helping try to figure out what they're going to do after college. And I had one girl that she had graduated from college and she just didn't know what she wanted to do with it. And she wasn't even sure if she liked the degree that she actually got. And she ended up deciding to go to graduate school. And so what we spent our time on was comparing graduate schools and we just made a spreadsheet of, these are the graduate schools I'm interested in. Here's the deadlines to get all my paperwork turned in, just like organizing it and just like thinking through it and stuff. So there's so many ways that how it ends up being, but it isn't sometimes how it got started.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think all the different supports that you offer and all the different ways you offer them is awesome. So how do people connect with you if they're interested in your services or listening to your podcast, or even connecting with you through the Promenade?
Oh, well, on the Promenade, I'm just Cynthia Kofel. If you were a business owner, you could also check with the Community Success Manager account, because that's also me. But just going to my Cynthia Kofel one is fine. I look at both of them. My podcast is on every platform, the Teen Anxiety Maze. So wherever you listen to podcasts, you can go. On social media and YouTube, I'm just at Cynthia Kofel Coaching. So if you just look that up, practically everything that I'm on, and I'm on all the things, though I wouldn't say that I'm consistently on anything, but I have a TikTok account, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the YouTube. I don't think I left anything out. So you can find me in any of those places and follow me. You could always just send me a direct message and say, hey, I'm interested in working with you. How do I do that? And I'll just send you all the things. But on my website, there is a work with me or contact me where you would click right on my calendar and you can just make an appointment to talk with me. And it's not a hard sell thing, because I usually just want to find out from the family what's going on. Like what is the parent struggling with? And then what is the teen struggling with? A lot of times it's different struggles. The parent thinks it's something or is struggling with one area of it. But when I'm talking to the teen, they're like, no, that's not really it. But during that consult, I can talk about all the things. I can also refer you to people who specifically do something that I don't do, because I'm in so many networking groups and I've worked with so many different types of coaches, especially on my podcast. I know a lot of people who do a lot of different things, and your teen also has to like working with me. So I don't have a problem with that. I do really connect well with young people. I think I'm a safe place for them. I mean, I can't connect 100% with every single person that I would ever meet in my life, even though I would like to. And so if your child doesn't feel comfortable, that's fine too. So whatever it was, I could help lead you in the right direction, even if it isn't me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if you're a parent of a teen and you're listening to this and you're going, oh, this might be something that I could really use some support on, definitely connect with Cynthia. I will link everything down in the show notes there so you can easily just click and navigate. Or if you're looking for just any type of like holistic wellness support, similar to what Cynthia does, you can always become a guest on the Promenade. There's a 7-day guest pass that you could access. And you can kind of browse around and see, in addition to Cynthia, like who all's there, what all they offer. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for being on here. This has been an awesome conversation.
Yes.
Definitely. I can relate to so many things that you were saying, again, like having teenagers of my own. So I appreciate you coming on, and yeah, thank you.
I loved it. I hope people connect with me. That would be so fun. I like to get to know more people.
Yep, that's why we do it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Soul Led Entrepreneur series. Make sure to follow Transformative Talks on all our social platforms so you never miss an episode. Our affiliate links to achieve quality of life and the Promenade Platform are in the description below. If you're looking for wellness, healing, and empowerment solutions, join the Promenade as a guest to get started. For Soul Led Entrepreneurs, you can book a discovery call to learn more.